Planning an event and wondering how you can give your attendees the best experience possible? Take advantage of customized meetings with Hilton that make it easier than ever to incorporate health, wellness, and great breaks. Hilton will help you build an extraordinary meeting that attendees will remember. To book your next meeting or event, go to meetings.hilton.com.
Are you
10, 9, 8,
okay, so we're gonna be
Welcome to GatherGeeks, a podcast by BizBash, the place where people passionate about meetings and events come together. Here are your hosts, BizBash CEO David Adler and Editor-in-Chief Beth Kormanik.
Hi, David.
Hey, Beth, here we are, another GatherGeeks podcast.
Today our guests are Mark Henneberger, Vice President of Shows and Events for Walmart, and David Kenyon, Senior Vice President of Production at C.E.O. Events. And we're going to talk big shows today. So, David, tell us the context of this interview.
Well, they invited us to visit them at their Christmas event that they do in August in Denver, where they actually recreate an entire Walmart store in a convention center, and they also bring in 6,000 of their store managers. And it was an incredible event that they put on. Leo did an incredible job, Leo Events. And the tour of the backstage will be the envy of anyone in the event industry, because when you do it for Walmart, it has to be perfect.
Well, we're going to hear about Walmart's approach to event tech, how they establish goals for events, and why event planning is a great job for a high adrenaline junkie, which is just perfect. So let's take a listen.
Both of these guys are totally there.
Great, let's listen.
Okay, so we're here with Mark and David, and I wanted to start with Mark. So you are the VP of Shows and Events for the world's largest retailer. I mean, that's pretty incredible. How important are events to the culture of your company?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Walmart traditionally, Sam Walton, our founder, really believed in gathering people together, whether it was when he was touring stores, he'd get all the associates in the back room or in the front of the store, get on his knees and ask questions. So it's so integral to who we are as a company, this notion of being a part of a community. So I think it's extremely important.
So it's in the DNA.
Absolutely.
I mean, and when you think about it, isn't every day going to Walmart in a store an event in some form?
We hope so.
I mean, that's really what it's about. I mean, it's about those experiences. So what are your signature shows? I mean, we're here in Denver. You're doing one of your big events. What are some of your signature shows? And the idea of having them over and over again, is that an important element, or are one-offs important?
So we tend to do, every year we do a year beginning meeting, and we vary the cities, and then we do a shareholders meeting in June, early June, and then we do a holiday meeting for the Walmart U.S. store managers to get them excited about what's happening in the fourth quarter, because anybody who knows anything about retail knows that you make it or break it in the fourth quarter.
Okay, but you said shareholder meeting.
Yes.
That is basically not the real story of that meeting. Talk about that meeting and why it's become iconic.
Yeah, I don't know. Iconic's a big word. I don't know if that's necessarily true.
World's largest retailer.
Yeah. No, it is a great event. And again, hearkening back to Sam Walton, he started that. He used to bring associates in. He and his wife would literally host a picnic at their house and have all associates from around the country come over there and have a chicken dinner or whatever. It was part of the culture, but the DNA of the Walmart culture is this notion of gathering people. So, we've continued. It's certainly gotten bigger. We do it at the University of Arkansas at the Bud Walton Arena, which is, that's Sam Walton's brother. And it's the basketball arena where the University of Arkansas plays. We've put 14,000 people in there. About 6,000 of them are associates from around the world. Many of them getting on a bus or a plane for the very first time out of their village, certainly out of their country, and coming to Bentonville.
And what does that feel like to you when you see those?
It's the coolest thing ever.
Tell us.
Yeah,
dig a little bit on that, because it's got to be. I'm already getting goosebumps hearing about it.
It is the coolest thing. I started in 2006 with the company, and my first week was the shareholders week. Now, so when I walked into the arena and saw these associates just going crazy, it's like, I think this is going to be a good place to do what I do. So I literally had no exposure to shareholders before walking into the arena the day of. And it was like, this is crazy good. I mean,
so how does it integrate between the shareholders and the associates? I mean, it's a whole program.
Yeah, there's a whole.
And our people like to geek out on this type of stuff.
Okay, no, so yeah, there's a whole.
And David will tell you this is like they live and breathe the geekiness of this.
So the week culminates with the shareholders meeting, like I say, with the 14,000 people and celebrities and whatever, blah blah blah. But they actually tour our associates come in, we put them on buses, they tour the home office, they see Sam Walton's real office in the building. They get to go into our TV studio and make a little commercial. We put on a whole thing called the Associate Expo, which is an interactive experiential event that they can interact with the different of our suppliers, programs, products, sample food, do zip lines. We create this whole deal. And then they have each of the groups, because we have International, Sam's Club, Supply Chain, and Walmart US, have their own meetings. And then we also have what we call grassroots meetings with those same associates, where they get the opportunity to tell leadership what's going on in their stores or clubs or DCs.
And how do the people get chosen to come?
So they're selected in some cases, by their manager or by their peers. So there's not any real solid criteria as how you get to come here.
But it is an honor.
But it is an honor.
It is an honor.
And we bring about half of the U.S. stores every year. So we switch from odd and even because there's just too many of them. And there's about 2,500 U.S. associates that come, 600 to 700 supply chains. So all of our distribution centers around the country come. About 700 Sam's Club associates, and then about 1,400 international associates.
Right. And you're turning them, I mean, we talk about influencer marketing. Isn't influencer marketing the ultimate when you bring people that are become 10 times more passionate for what you do? And
yeah, I mean, I think that's really the key to the success of the event. Why we continue to do it and try to do it better every year is because these folks go back as the best brand advocates you could ever have. I mean, they have been dipped in the culture. They've had a fabulous time. They've got to meet senior leadership, humanize the senior leaders of the company, and then they take that back to their stores or clubs, and they're like, they can't say enough good things about
Doesn't
Walmart.
Get better. David, you told me about bringing Sam back at the last one. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So, when Mark and his team had actually bounced, I think, this idea around for a couple of years, is should we bring Sam back? How would we bring Sam back? And I think, the push came from senior leadership to this is the year to bring Sam back. And the challenge is how do you do it in an effective, classy way that's not creepy or not ghost-like. And I think, although we had a pretty tight time frame, that bringing back a hologram of Sam for just a quick 60 seconds, it was fun, it was challenging, and I think it created a pretty huge emotional impact on an arena with 14,000 people. You could hear a pin drop.
Really? Did you? What was your feeling, Mark, on when you saw that? You were part of the planning of it, but I would assume
correct, yeah.
You still had some, oh my God.
Well, I mean, there's, anytime you take a risk like that with the technology, I mean, holograms are pretty cool, but the sight lines and everything else can affect how effective the effect is. So we never really knew for sure how it was going to work until we got into the arena. Even when we got on site, we still had to make some adjustments to the staging to make it appear more realistic. So literally, 2 days before showtime, we were still tweaking it to make sure that it worked. But
and were you? You're a pretty calm guy. Did it still make you a little agita?
It's really funny. The big stuff I don't worry about. I mean, I trust people like David and his team to deliver. But I've learned over the years that the big stuff's the big stuff. I mean, I really think it's funny. There's that old adage about don't sweat the small stuff. In this business, the small stuff's what kills you.
That is probably one of the best lessons that people could take away from this, listening to this.
I mean, it's true. It's like it's the attention to detail that separates, the really good productions from the bad ones.
Right. So, and flipping a little bit, you started 12 years ago, you mentioned, and the iPhone's 11 years old. And, we talk about technology. We talk about how important it is. how did the world change for you, or did it, with the advent of the iPhone and everybody holding up their phone? I mean, if people come back not knowing what was going on, what are these people doing? Holding up their hands in their arms in the air, holding a little box, pointing it at people.
Yeah, replace the Bic lighter. I'm from a generation that's what we did with Bic lighters.
Exactly.
But yeah, you know, it's interesting. I say this all the time, and part of it because I have a vested interest in this is my career. But I still think no matter how much technology you have, how many shiny objects you bring out, at the end of the day, it's that, you know, it's the gathering of people in a spot to be something bigger to be part of something bigger than themselves. And I think that's more powerful than iPhones or iPads or AI, VR, you name it. At the end of the day, it's still human beings interacting and having a common goal.
But you have to plan that now. I believe in this thing called intentional humanism at these events. And you almost have to make sure that you're not overly thinking technology and actually remembering that you have to have enough time for people to talk to each other.
Yeah, so I think that we're intentional on when we interject technology. So we'll do like audience response, like simple things to get people still be engaged and use their devices. But at the end of the day, we want them experiencing the live event, not looking at it on their phone.
Right, and David, how do you react to that whole idea that how do you program this in that make it, there's one thing I know about you guys, there's no accidents, everything is planned, but planning to be human is now part of the planning, I think.
Sure. I think first you have to accept that everybody now has a device. So I think you adjust your programming accordingly. Every show we do now has some type of app, some type of digital app. So using that app to help the one-on-one experience, to help that networking experience, it enhances the event. It doesn't replace the event.
It's working together.
Absolutely. You know, I think the biggest thing that the iPhone has done for us is it gives every attendee access to instantaneous information, whether it be fact checking or so. I think it's changed the message we deliver from the stage a little bit because information is instantaneous to everybody.
And do you see things like augmented reality adding to that?
I think it adds not necessarily to the general session experience. I think it absolutely adds to the individualized experiential experience, whether it's on the exhibit floor or some type of networking experience. I think it just enhances. Used properly, technology enhances the experience.
Well, also, it's interesting. We were talking earlier about how it's all about this analytics, though, but the analytics are now graphical. So you can see in a minute what something is, as opposed to sending it down to the back office and have somebody analyze it. 3 weeks later, you figure out what the solution is, like with heat mapping and things like that.
Well, sure. I think, with Facebook and Twitter and people liking or disliking, instantaneously how big of a hit you are with your extended crowd. There's no, let's wait and get the analytics back to what you said. Analytics from a social media perspective are instantaneous now.
Right. You need to react.
Absolutely.
But how do you react? Do you see something changing and you can't move an aircraft carrier to make a change in the way you're doing things? Or can you when you do a show like this?
Well, I think you can adjust on the fly to a certain extent. I think in the same way we all read an audience in this business and we understand if something's not working, we'll make adjustments on the fly. Absolutely. Some small programming adjustments when you figure out something is or isn't working. The unique thing about corporate is we don't get a chance to try it out. We don't have test audience like we do in New York Broadway and tweak the audience. We have one shot at getting this right. So remaining nimble and ability to adjust last minute, I think remains important.
But that brings me back to Mark in terms of you do these 3 signature events and you're doing them you're improving them each time. Are you looking, it's a good way to know a baseline. This worked last year, so let's do something. With the same time, the challenge is how do you keep making it better?
Right. It's actually, again, hearkening back to the culture of Walmart, we have this thing called COEs, which is correction of errors.
Oh, okay.
So every event, whether it's in a store or the stuff that we do, we get together afterwards with the key stakeholders and say what worked and what didn't from everyone's perspective. We also put in COAs, which is celebration of accomplishments, because to balance it a bit, because there are some things that go really well.
Right.
We tend to, as human beings, tend to focus on the negative, but pulling out some of the stars of the event and recognizing them and elevating them. But getting back to the COEs, at the end of the day, we're always trying to improve. Because let's face it, with so many complexities, with 6,000 people all over the place in this convention center, you're always going to do something unexpected is going to happen. Right, that's the great thing and the horrible thing about live events.
Right.
So how do you then either that was cool, we didn't know that was going to happen, or we thought that was going to kill it and it was awful. Like, how do you massage that for the next time?
So what's your methodology of doing that? Like I always have this thought, okay, if I just start writing notes as the CEO of a company to everybody right afterwards, like they're going to kill me. But is there a methodology to make it so that it's a gentle approach to evaluation?
Yeah, I think people here at Walmart accept that as part of the process.
Right.
It's like, you plan an event, you execute an event, and then you look back at the event and plan the next one. So I think it's a continuous, it's a virtuous circle. So I think people accept it. People are, you can get your feelings hurt. That's just the nature of the beast. But if it makes the next event better, then I think people go, okay, I get it. I'm okay with it.
And are you, as the head of events, the person that is taking in all this information, or are you part of the discussion?
It's part of the discussion.
Yeah.
I mean, we'd like to pull together the whole team and sit down and just kind of go around. Okay, you were in charge of breakouts. What happened over there?
Okay.
And just go right down the line and get, this whole notion of collaboration to figure out.
Well, that brings me to the next question. I call event organizers, I believe the modern term today is that we're all collaboration artists. Because to put together these incredible events is a lot more than just putting on a show, but it's your really collaboration. What is the art of pulling these teams together? At the end of the day, your fingerprints are on everything because you're in charge. What have you learned in how to be a great manager for event teams and bringing in people like David and Leo events and making sure that those people work up to their potential?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's clearly establishing a goal. So having everyone there's a central focus for what we want to accomplish, and then you just build off of that.
How strategic is that goal? Is it general or is it very, very strategic?
I think it depends. I don't know which works better.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think because Walmart's such a big place, it's really hard to get down to, like our CEO has 4 objectives for the year, but they're so interpretive.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, but we just try to come up with a theme for the event. It doesn't necessarily appear as on collateral material, but we'll have, this is what we're trying to accomplish.
An organizing principle.
Exactly right. Even better than a theme. Come up with an organizing principle and then build off of that. Every spoke, regardless of how it touches the attendee, all comes back to that organizing principle.
And how much of your stuff is, you're hiring outside people, you're hiring inside people. You've got an orchestra, basically, of types of talent. Yep. How do you manage that? I mean, where does the buck stop on that? And how do you sort of make sure that everybody's in the same team and then giving people ownership for what they do? I mean, it's got to be an art.
I don't know if it's an art, but I'm a firm believer in hands-off. Like, point somebody in the right direction, let them go, and if they need help, they'll come and ask for it. I try not to.
How long did it take you to get there?
It's quite a while. I mean, you could probably ask David when I'm not in the room, and he'd say he's still learning. I mean, I try not to be a micromanager. There's nothing.
Oh, it's hard not to sometimes.
It's so hard.
Yeah.
So you just want to say, get out of the way, I'll do this myself. But so I think it's just happened over the years. I think as I become less worried about these things, it just, you kind of go with the flow. And
right. Well, how do you do when you come to an event day of? I mean, how do you try to make sure you bite your tongue on things sometimes?
Absolutely. I mean, so I believe that my responsibility is to not let the client know that there's a problem.
And your client is your senior manager?
It's senior management here at Walmart. So, yeah.
And David's client is you.
Which is ironic because I have this exact same philosophy about my client.
Well, I mean,
everybody's going to client.
Absolutely.
If the person who's going to go on stage sees me panicking, they're going to panic. So I deliberately try to be calmer than I probably should be under certain circumstances because that's my responsibility, is to make things as easy as possible for the customer.
I think the old adage, never let them see you sweat. It's our job to instill confidence in our clients, Mark and his client, me and my client. I think, especially when it comes to collaboration, that one of the great thing that's evolved with Mark's team and the Leo team is an element of trust and honesty. Is it's because Mark comes from the industry, and not all of my clients do come from this industry, is we can have good, frank, honest conversations and come to solutions collaboratively, and as opposed to, okay, I need to figure out the solution, have it all done.
Well,
we don't want to let Mark know.
Well, Mark knows how the sausage is made.
Well, right. So he's seen the inside of the factory. That makes it that makes it easier. It can sometimes make it more challenging too, because Mark can set a high bar. But that challenges my team to do better.
What advice do you give to that young person that doesn't have the temperament thing down, and that all of a sudden you see them freaking out? Do you what advice?
I think you tell them exactly that, is watch the people that have been doing this forever. Nothing's going to get accomplished better by you being upset or angry or freaked out or anything. You remain calm. We have really smart people on our teams, and they really know what they're doing. So you just rely on your experience and make good, smart, solid decisions. I always tell my team, I will never, ever get upset with you for making the wrong decision one time. As long as it was a well thought out, good decision. Even if it wasn't necessarily the way I would do it, everybody makes mistakes. I expect you not to make them twice.
Right. That's interesting. So I'm going to go to the ROI question, which we talked a little bit about. You're the world's largest retailer in the world, okay? And how do you know whether an event works or not? And what is the measurement now? And how serious do people take it? Or is it like you know it when you know it?
So I think it's a little bit of all of that. I mean, we do a post-event survey.
Yeah.
So we ask our attendees, what did you learn? What did you like? What should we do more of? What should we do less of? So we do the standard, thumbs up, thumbs down.
Right.
But we can see if there's certain things that we try to teach the store managers when we're touring stores in the coming months. We'll see certain displays that are set up that were literally taken from the merchandise floor here, in this case, Denver. So there's a teaching element to it. So that's another way we say, hey, these guys really took this and ran with it. It's hard to judge, sales, because we talked earlier.
Yeah.
This is not a consumer-facing event, so
Right.
we can't.
Not ticket sales. It's not attendees.
Correct.
It's not,
Right. But I do think that when people leave and they, you can just tell, like when the closing general session, when they walk out of the arena, we'll know if we did our job or not.
Do you think this will ever be answered, this question? Or is this just the
I think the expected answers will evolve. I think the more the digital component, the handheld device, we're able to get more analytics that way. And
Right.
I think as you become a bit more integrated, I think it's not going to be measurable in how much did store sales increase as a result of them being at this meeting here in Denver. But I think what you will see is we got this many more hits or this much more activity by the store managers. They were engaged this much more. And I think those are the analytics
Right.
that we're going to start to look for.
We're going to take a little break and come right back after this message from Hilton. So when's the big event? Hilton's here for planners with their exclusive customized meetings. Become a wow maker and save time by letting Hilton help you present an extraordinary event, one that leads to memorable and meaningful connections. Visit meetings.hilton.com and let Hilton help you. I think I mentioned this before, that I am a big believer in that convening power is the new marketing. When you see that Dreamforce, those are consumer-facing events, but it's still the idea that people are marching and voting with their attendance and their enthusiasm and their influencer, that this is really showing where AWS, Amazon Web Services, which is another group that you've heard of, but they're going to have, for their Amazon Web Services, they're going to have 200,000 people coming to their event for training, learning, and development in the next few years in Vegas. And so is Dreamforce with 138,000 people. There's something going on with this, and I'm not sure how to where it's going, but it's something happening. How important, and this is for both of you, that first impression now when you come to an event from the attendee guest experience, is that important now, or is that just part of the game? I mean, how do you you walk into a room and it's like, oh my God.
Well, I think the first impression is no longer what it was. The first
Yes,
impression
okay,
used
good.
to be when you walk into the room, wow, big screen, cool set, great music, cool band. That's no longer the first impression. The first impression now happens weeks or months prior to the event. And that's what the digital movement has given us, is the ability to reach out to the attendee, to the customer, to whoever that is, weeks or months in advance, and build up that enthusiasm. So first impression happens now long before the event.
And when
does.
so how do you integrate that digital side from the event? Is it the invitation? Is it what are you doing to spark that? Oh my God, I got to go there.
Absolutely.
So one of the things that we do, we have a app created specifically for each event that we do, and there's a know before you go component that the store managers have to go to, download the app, and then preview what they're going to see when they're here. So we're starting that process 2 weeks in advance. They get their airline confirmation, their hotel confirmation, and oh, by the way, here's some things you need to start to learn, look at, ask your department managers questions before you come. We have a way for people to literally ask questions of senior leadership virtually, and then we will address like the top 10 in our general session on Thursday.
Well, there's just excitement that they're going to come.
Yeah.
I mean, that's this is incredible. Like, we're so jaded because we go to so many things, right? But most people don't do what we do. So that's really interesting. But the idea, though, that production values for first impressions, second impressions, the reveals, is that still part of the game? I mean, you're constantly having to take advantage of their time and make sure it's worthwhile.
Sure. I think you're always challenged to how do we continue to evolve and impress and make a great first impression, whether that first impression be when you first are exposed to the look and feel of the event via the app 2 weeks ahead of time, or it's when you first walk into that room and you set the stage. We're all affected by that first impression. And that's probably the biggest challenge we have of doing 3 large events a year, is how do we continue? Because you don't want to continue to make each one bigger and bigger and bigger. That's not sustainable. But to make each one just a different experience in some way, shape, or form.
So with that, you reminded me of what you do with the bands, with the music entertainment. Talk a little bit about that, because I thought that was adding mystery to it, as opposed to using the big name talent to get people to come.
Sure.
They don't even know that the big name talent's coming.
Well, sure. So you're referring to shareholders, where
shareholders, yeah.
Nobody really shares who the acts are during the event. And I think that's because we don't utilize, or Walmart doesn't utilize the acts to drive attendance. They have the attendance there, so they can keep that as a big reveal. They can keep that anticipation up and really up until that artist is announced on the stage.
I mean, I think that's one of the real keys to the success of the shareholders meeting, is that notion of that surprise element. Again, we don't have to drive attendance. Even if we were selling tickets, I still wouldn't want to tell people who was coming. It's like, you don't want to miss this. It's going to be great. I mean, that's
it must be. I now look at events not by how many people attend, but how many conversations you're curating. And I would assume that mystery conversation brings people together like nobody's business.
Yeah, it's actually kind of funny. We've taken it to the next level. So the last 4 years, the CEO and I do this 20 questions gag that we run on our internal communications network. Having him try to guess who the host is.
Oh, that's great.
So it's kind of fun.
Yeah.
It's a little bit uncomfortable for me because he's very smooth, good-looking guy. But we have a lot of fun with it, and it's created a little bit of a cult following within the home office, because they literally try to figure out by the clues, by the questions he asked me, who the host is going to be.
So it brings up the question about rituals and traditions. I mean, it sounds like that's part of the DNA of Walmart. You're going back to the picnics almost, and things like that. So it's really kind of interesting. I want to go to the idea of, when did you actually, Mark, know that this is the business you wanted to be in? You come from automotive. Was this something that you did in high school or elementary school, or how do you know that this is the business you wanted to be in?
That's a great question. My first job was in the summer between high school and college. I washed trucks on a Chevrolet product film. So I actually did a bunch of film and video work in Detroit before I got my first opportunity to do a live event. And a producer I was working for said, "Hey, how would you like to do this live event for Chrysler?" And I said, "Okay, I'll give it a go." And we did this event out at the Chelsea Proving Grounds, which is a huge plot of land where Chrysler did, testing of their vehicles prior to production. And we had the Jack Kochman Thrill Drivers was the act. I can still remember to this day, 33 years later. But I fell in love with the idea of the holy crap moments. And I think there's a certain mentality, like you have to love, you don't have to be an adrenaline junkie. Like I don't want to jump out of an airplane. I don't want to go swimming with sharks or anything like that. But I think that the high you get when you pull off an event, all those moving pieces and parts coming together and creating that wonderful experience for an attendee, I don't think there's anything like it. So I think that's a long-winded answer to your question, but it was 1985 in the Chelsea, Michigan.
How old were you?
I'm not telling you that.
No, I was high school.
I was 12.
Was that college, high school?
It was after college.
It was right after college. So, Did you have an inkling that you liked this beforehand?
I had never done a live event prior to the opportunity to do it. I had done films that played in live events because automotive did a lot of. That's what they did with their dealer groups. They got them together and showed them the new products that were coming out. But I had never gone to or done a live event, so. It was a new experience, but I was hooked.
David, when did you actually decide this was the thing for you?
Sure. So I actually grew up in a theater family, and my dad had a love for Broadway, and whenever he would attend sales events in New York, he'd come back, with playbills from the Broadway shows. So it always intrigued me. And I grew up with, Man of La Mancha and Sound of Music and My Fair Lady, and so I always had an affinity for Broadway. So I was involved in theater as a young kid, whether it be the guy running the light board or the soundboard. I was actually on stage a little bit. Developed a love for music. Worked with bands, doing sound for bands, and that just kind of married together into kind of a music theater career, and I was on the road for quite a few years, and then ended up in college and in my early 20s and got a theatrical and a music business degree, and I fell into corporate. I had no idea corporate existed, and I took a job working for Opryland USA in Nashville, Tennessee, and I was the producer for the park shows that they would send to corporate events. And at one point, somebody said, "Hey, we're going to do a Louise Mandrell concert." And I'm like, "Great! What arena are we doing that in?" "Oh, we're doing it in this hotel ballroom." And I said, "You can't do a concert in a hotel ballroom." And sure enough, we load in and we punch out lights and we hang chain motors from lights, and then we did a concert for a private group of people, which I had never seen done before. And that was 1994. That was my into corporate events, and I found out that was something that it took my love for theater, it took my love for music, and it took my love for doing something challenging and different every time, which is what corporate theater is, and put it all into one bundle for me.
That's great. Well, I think that we've seen this industry change dramatically in the last 30 years.
Absolutely.
And it's it's for me it's such an important thing to do, that we're taking people's time and we're trying to fill it with things that are going to enhance their lives, and because their lives are going to work, their lives are going to be entertained, their lives are going out to dinner, but it's really part of this whole pursuit of happiness in many cases.
Absolutely.
So, anyway, so last question. I'm not going to ask you how old you are, but I'm going to pretend you're 20 years old. What advice would you give to you at 20? And what advice would you give to others who want to get into this business, Mark? This is like the real sage mentor thing.
Oh, boy.
And I hear you are like big in being a mentor.
I think it's part of what you have to do as you continue along your career path, is you have to give back.
Right.
And hopefully teach people little bits of what you've learned, a lot of times more through mistakes than accomplishments. But you have to have that fire in your belly. I mean, that's what I tell people that interview to join the team, because everyone thinks being on the events team at Walmart is the coolest thing ever. And it's like, we know
the glamour of our industry.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, so you potential candidates see the end product, but you don't realize the grind that it takes to get there. But you got to have that fire in your belly.
Right.
You got to be willing to take risks, not crazy risk, but you have to, understand that because it's a live event, things are going to happen that you never thought would happen. I mean, like I said, I've been doing this for 33 years, so I've done thousands of live events. And there's always something that I shake my head and go, I didn't see that coming. And I try to tell that to young people. It's like, things are always going to go some way you never thought they were going to go. But the good producers, the good companies can correct before the audience knows that something went wrong. I think it's that ability to, David mentioned earlier, turn on a dime, to adjust on the fly. That separates the good events from the bad events.
And what educational course should people take? I mean, what should they be learning? Did they take events, or should they take liberal arts and history and everything else?
I just think general education is fine. I'm sure that there are classes that can help you with the technical side of this business, but at the end of the day, I mean, you mentioned it, this is a collaboration business. This is a people business. So you got to experience it. You have to, volunteer at your local church or wherever get involved and find out what the business is about before you jump in with both feet. But once you find that you love the live aspect of this stuff, then go for it and go for it hard.
Great. David, your advice to your 20-year-old self and to your people that come and ask you questions?
Yeah, I don't think I would change anything that my 20-year-old self did. I actually think I got this great experience, and I was lucky to have really great opportunity. And I think that's the advice I give to other 20-year-olds is the opportunity is out there. And I, as a kid, I volunteered at community theaters, at local churches or synagogues, fairs, festivals. I would do whatever I could just to get my hands on the experience and learn every piece of the business. I think that's the key is people, young kids sometimes think, well, I want to be this type of, in this event, I want to be the technical director. You need to know everything. You need to learn everything. Learn from the people that have been doing this, and never stop learning.
And never stop learning. I'm glad
I learned that
you mentioned
years
that.
ago. I have been lucky that I've done some of the biggest events in our industry. I learn every time I do an event. I learn something new from somebody I didn't know before. So never shut yourself down. Always continue to evolve. And I think that's been a key to a lot of Leo's success is we continue to evolve and change and always know we can always do better.
I would say learning development is the coolest thing going now. And I think it's internal, it's external, it's your life, it's everything. Yeah. So anyway.
I also think that I tell people to be curious, always ask questions. You always want to continue. Again, it's part of the learning process.
Yeah.
And the other thing is I would have told myself at 20 to buy Apple stock.
Seriously.
Well, of course.
The Walmart stock.
Walmart stock today is probably fantastic. Judging from the talent that I saw in the last day here, I am already waiting to go to Walmart the minute the new products are coming out that I saw. So thank you, guys. This has been illuminating, fabulous, and a great conversation.
Thanks, David.
Thanks, David.
David, thanks for that. So when you have the heft and presumably the budget of Walmart, you're still following the basics of event planning, including the post-event review. They just use their own terminology. I really like hearing about the COE, the correction of errors, and the COA, the celebration of accomplishments, looking at, where you can improve and then who are the stars of the events. So I found that interesting.
Yeah, no, they really do. They analyze everything. They go through everything, but they're very human about everything that they do. And I was very impressed at I guess maybe it's the lack of arrogance. They really are doing it for the right reasons. It's not a show for the sake of a show. It's a show for the sake of the business and celebrating the people that are attending. I mean, I've never been at a place where you felt that the people that were in the audience were so much the goal.
Another thing that I think all planners can relate to is that the feeling of something unexpected is going to happen, or that knowledge. You're doing an event, it's not always going to go according to plan. And as they said, that's the great thing and the worst part of the nature of live events. So these events and shows, even mega events where you expect every last thing to be scripted and nailed down, have to retain flexibility. And maybe that's easier said than done, but it's reality.
Yeah, no, I think that, it's all perfectly scripted until you get on the stage. And then you kind of have to read the audience too. And I think that some of the presenters are reading the audience and reacting. I think that's totally human.
Yeah. So the moral is, Walmart, it's just like us, the phrase celebrities, they're just like us. It's kind of the same thing. Even when you're working with these big budgets and you have high expectations, they're still faced with the same event challenges and procedures and just unexpected things that everyone else is faced with.
Well, that's why having the team, that's why this kind of is the model of the perfect agency and the perfect client. And they know how to work together and they know how to read each other's minds. And I think that was part of the key to being okay with being more flexible.
All right. Well, thanks for that, David.
Great. So, Beth, what else is going on at BizBash?
Well, we just released the top 100 events in the United States and the top 100 events in Canada. So these are two mega lists, always with new events added and others taken off each year, and changes in the rankings, of course. So find out why there's a new number one benefit in Canada and why the Grammys lost some ground this year in the U.S. list. So check all of that out at bizbash.com. And the other thing I'll add is that tweet us at BizBash, to let us know your top events. These lists, as we say, they're subjective. Certainly there are opinions, and they change every year, but they're also meant to be conversation starters. So we'd love for our GatherGeeks listeners to be part of that conversation.
Yeah, and if I can also put in a pitch for our GatherGeek audience to comment on the podcast itself, that would be very helpful to us. We're getting some great comments, but we can always use more, and we love what we do, and we just want more people to know about what we do. Great. So before we end, I want to thank Claire Hoffman for being our editorial voice of putting this thing together, putting all of our descriptions and our keywords together on the important documents that need to be done to create a podcast. Dave Nelson, our producer, who puts the show together. Of course, last but not least, Rebecca Pappas for getting it on the air, distributing the show. So until next time, what do we say, Beth?
Gather on, David.
Great. Gather on.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you like what you're hearing, be sure to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or your favorite podcast app. We can be found on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Player FM, Google Play, and Pocket Cast. Be sure to leave us a rating and review. It helps others discover the GatherGeeks podcast. We'd also love to hear from you. You can leave feedback on Twitter at GatherGeeks or leave us an email, gathergeeks@bizbash.com. We hope you'll join us again for the next episode of GatherGeeks. Until then, gather on. A leader in event education, the Event Leadership Institute offers on-demand video classes, interviews with industry mavericks, and online instructor-led professional development courses taught by industry experts. Visit eventleadershipinstitute.com for more information and to see a schedule of upcoming classes.